Hello and welcome to round 2 of the
Absolute Game Off.
Nerd! We are your non-geek,
intro.
non-nerd hosts, JP and Rohan, and we have a special guest, part of our elite group of comic collectors. We have Travis from Comics Limited, but Rohan, please give him a proper introduction.
Yeah, we have another great member of the secret shadow group, a fellow Washingtonian, a fellow cue ball up top. Say hello to Travis from Comics Limited. How's it going, Travis?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, so I mean, we obviously kick these things off the same every week. And so the question to start with, Travis, take us back. What is your origin story?
Well, it starts in the beginning. I was born, and then there were comics. Now, seriously, actually, I always was kind of into art, and that was it was a lot of my how things were. And I started off with a couple grandparents who really, two grandmothers, my mom's mom and my dad's mom, and they both really were into. They really were both into me doing art, and so I had an opportunity to. One grandmother bought me an Iron Man. I think it was like 221, I want to say. And then another grandmother who got me into Dark Horse and just bought a couple issues here and there. And there were just a few comics here. I'd get Invaders get some Invaders comics and hear this book or this book. It was never really collecting at that point in time in my life. It was more about having a comic book that I could look at and I could draw from and do art from. And as you guys, art is my thing. I mean, you can see on my wall behind me, I don't have a whole bunch of comic book covers. I have pieces of art. And stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got into it. The collecting aspect of it happened when I got into junior high, and I met Brian. And
you and Brian go back that far?
We do. We go all the way back to junior high.
So he's talking about Brian from Big Me McFly, the comic guy who we had on several weeks back.
Yeah.
Oh,
got
awesome.
it. Okay.
My daughter is standing right over here. She had to come and get the cat, and so she wanted to. She was like, "Do you want the cat on the screen?" I'm like, "No." Anyway, Big B and I have been friends since junior high, and he and we had another friend a guy named Eric, who we used to all kind of do comic book stuff together, and so they kind of spurned the collecting aspect of it for me, because I was at that point in time I wasn't collecting. I was just buying a book here, reading it. I had it cut. I was cutting things out of the comics. It was all about drawing and all about doing that stuff. But meeting them, they're both artists, and so it was like with them it was all about art and drawing. But then they were like all about having the comic book, having that piece of that comic, and here's the story, and check this out, and John Byrne, and then, like I was saying the other night, Paul Michael Smith and John Romita, when they were doing X-Men after John Byrne. And I was like, that's kind of where I came into X-Men, was right around the John Romita. It's funny that Brian always talks about that X-Men 175 being his first comic book.
Mm-hmm.
But the first comic book I ever traded with Brian was to get X-Men 175, Uncanny X-Men 175. That was the very first comic book I traded from, because he had two of them. And he wanted something I had, so it was a good trade. And then I kind of collected X-Men. I started right around, I want to say it was issue 210. I think that was my very first X-Men issue. And that was kind of the book that I stuck with for a really long time, until like the end of the Claremont run, and then him moving over to X-Men and with Jim Lee, and then the Fallout, and I stayed on X-Men, but then I kind of was like, well, they kicked all of my favorite people out of the comic. I'm going to go over and buy Image now. And so then I joined Image. I bought Wildcats. I bought some Spawn. I wasn't a big fan. I have to admit, Spawn just wasn't my
Wasn't your jam?
Not my jam. It just wasn't. But Wildcats, I love Jim Lee's work. His art was awesome. And I remember that moment, because, Silvestri was doing Cyberforce, and he did the 1 through 4, and then he started again with a new number 1, right? And then but it took a little bit longer for number 5 to come out of Wildcats. But when number 5 of Wildcats came out, I remember that book being so cool with that big giant fold-out cover and all the art in it, and that stuff kind of that just really got me going, and that was with that, and then
I was gonna say,
I
go ahead.
was gonna say that's what Image was all about, was the artwork. It wasn't the stories, it was the artwork. But and that's that's when I got into collecting, was in the 90s myself, and artwork like Liefeld and Jim Lee and McFarlane brought me in, and then I followed them to Image and collected the first couple runs there. And I never cared about story. I drew what they drew on the page.
Yeah,
that's how I
was gonna say too. Like I was as a child then too. Like I used to like drawing, like whether it be for my Marvel cards or the comics. And what I was gonna say is a cover that I drew a lot was Wildcats 1. And I don't care how old I get, I will always remember the cover of Wildcats 1. But if you put a gun to my head, I could not identify a single other Wildcats cover. But I know that cover.
You can't identify one Wildcat name, you said?
No, a cover. Like
I
can't picture like 2 through whatever it went to. I cannot picture what those cover, but like 1 is it's right there in my head, like vividly. Like I always will.
I had the gold edition of it.
Oh yeah, I remember
of 1. Oh yeah.
We bought 100 comics just to get that number 1 or that gold one, and I freaking sold it 2 years ago, and I wish I could find it again, because it wasn't like in great shape. But my dad and I bought the 100 comics just to get that one, because we were going to retire on that gold book. It's kind of the joke, like Superman. But I wish I still had it. But they did have some of the greatest artwork back then, in my opinion. And but you weren't a McFarlane fan?
Well, okay, so I'm a McFarlane fan. I like his stuff. I just wasn't that for me. Okay, so you guys know that I'm a man of faith. I believe in God, and I have this. And there was I just really struggled. I struggled a lot with McFarlane's story. I went back and forth. Like I wanted to like it because I love the artwork.
Spawn?
Huh?
For Spawn, because it was
Spawn.
the devil.
Spawn.
Yeah.
So so I really struggled with it, and it wasn't necessarily because of what they were teaching. I just looked at it, and it was so dark, and it just didn't. I like comics. I like dark comics, but I like dark comics that come to some sort of resolution. Like if I were to pick out a movie that I absolutely thought was incredible but absolutely hate and despise, it would be Event Horizon, right?
Oh, it's the scariest movie I've ever seen.
Right. Okay. But you know what makes that movie the worst movie in the world?
The end.
No resolution. There's no resolution. Nothing good comes out of that movie. Not a single thing. Everybody sucks at the end of that movie, no matter what. And that I can't abide in a story. I mean, that's too close to what life does, right? Oh, yeah. Life turns out suck all the time. I don't need a movie or a comic book to tell me about life, because I already experienced that in reality.
The comics to find resolution.
Yeah, I want the resolution because it builds a place of hope, right? And for me, hope is important. And so when I look at that, I don't want no resolution. I want to have. It's like I want resolution, good, bad, or indifferent. I want resolution. I mean, it's that is just a thing I struggle with. And Spawn always felt like it would get somewhere to close to some resolution, and they'd pull it back in. It was like it's like The Godfather over and over again, and I just couldn't. It was just not my thing. I look at McFarlane's art and I love it, and I love the influence he has on newer artists today. I mean, I could pick out an artist right now that I think is heavily influenced by McFarlane and Liefeld and even Jim Lee and Portacio, Carrie Andrews, one of my favorite all-time artists. That I love the work. I mean, it just I got a new cover today, a Carrie Andrews cover today that is just absolutely just gorgeous, and it's that is, when it comes to art, I love it. But that story was just so. See, I have to admit, I love story. In the '90s was when I transitioned from just loving art to really actually finding that I needed to have something more.
And I want to talk on that, but real quick before I get to where I want to go with that, did you ever have a stopping point and then come back, or have you been comics nonstop all the way through?
No, I've been pretty much comics all the way through. I mean, had some low points where where I kept a small collection rather than what you see today, boxes and boxes and shelves. I mean, I think the smallest my collection ever was when I was going to Eastern Washington University in my mid to late 20s. I had maybe a long box of comics, and that was all I had. But I always had some. Okay. It was always a part. Okay. I never totally gave up on it.
Okay, so and we're gonna obviously come back to collecting, but what I wanted to come to, what basically you saying you like story, is just in knowing you, we know you are a avid and still to this day an avid comic book reader, correct?
Yes.
So tell me, A, what's on your pull list at the shop, and then B, what are your favorite storylines going on right now? Because JP and I, we don't read the modern stuff. We don't read comics much in general anymore. But so I always like to ask what people are liking these days.
Okay, so on my pull list was, so just so you guys know, 2 weeks ago I cut my pull list in half.
Are we talking like 10 to 20 or 50 to 25 or like 10?
How about I went from 40 comics to 20 comics.
Oh, damn. Shit. All right. Now, are you able to read all of these?
I wasn't able to read all of them when I was at 40 comics.
Yeah. That's why you cut down. Now, can you manage getting through 20 a week?
Yeah. I mean, I had to, because of how much I was buying, I had to catch up, and so I got behind in some areas, but I'm getting caught up now. My pull list right now, it's going to sound pretty basic, but Superman, Batman, Amazing Spider-Man, more recently Miles Morales, Spider-Man.
You don't need to go through all of them. What are some of your favorites?
My favorite Superman is by far one of my top favorites right now. G.I. Joe is one of my top favorites. The story is so incredible. I've berated Big B about this now more times than I can say. It's not really his fault. I was a snob, and I liked X-Men and didn't like G.I. Joe. I'll admit it. The art in X-Men was cool. The art in G.I. Joe was, yeah. So, and so that's why, yeah. Great covers. I mean, I was going back and looking at so many Mike Zeck covers. I had no idea. Ultimate Spider-Man right now. That book is the best book out there, and I'm not kidding. Everybody's talking about hype. No, it really is that good.
Who's the writer on
that? Jonathan Hickman.
Oh, see, that's the guy. So we have a good buddy, Nick of the what's his podcast? The Geekable podcast. And that's all he's like, Jonathan Hickman is his best or his favorite writer. And whether it was him on Fantastic Four, him on X-Men, him on Secret Wars, the guy is just gold, he tells us.
Yeah, he is. There's no, I would say my favorite thing he wrote, when S.H.I.E.L.D. fell in the storyline right before when Asgard was on Earth in Marvel Comics for a while, when S.H.I.E.L.D. fell and they made Hammer and they had Secret Warriors, and the Secret Warriors were Nick Fury's little secret S.H.I.E.L.D. team. That was Bendis started the story in the first issue, and Hickman wrote the rest of it. And it was by far my favorite comic book of those 2 years. And then Hickman started doing Fantastic Four halfway through that storyline. Which then, if you understand what that Fantastic Four really ran, that Fantastic Four run was Fantastic Four all the way to the very end of that Secret War storyline that he did. That was one big long story.
To the end of Secret
And-
Wars 2015.
Yeah, 2015 Secret War. That was one big continuous story, all the way across.
And you loved it.
I loved it. I loved it. You know what? His Avengers storylines were tied to it. His everything. And so when he took over X-Men, well, this is an interesting story. You like stories, so this is a good story. So he had left Marvel. He wasn't doing anything for Marvel. He wasn't doing anything for DC. He was doing his own independent stuff. And he goes and he did a Reddit interview. And it was one of those live interviews that Reddit did for a few years back. And a lot of people asking questions, things like that. The interview goes really well. Everybody really likes what he had to say, but he doesn't give anybody information. But he asked one question of everybody in Reddit. He goes, "So who should I go with next? Should I sign a contract with Marvel or sign a contract with DC?" Because he's an independent contractor, right? And so everybody was throwing out Marvel, DC. You should do this book. You should do this book. We need you back on Fantastic Four. We need you here. We need you there, right? Everybody's saying all this stuff. And so I followed the stream for a while, and still no one's talking about it. But he said something that made me think he's going to do X-Men next. And so I wrote this in Reddit. I should go find that post because I have it in Reddit.
Travis called it.
I posted in Reddit a month before he signed his contract with Marvel, because he said, "Oh, I'm getting to put out my my Shield story," because he had done this 6-issue miniseries of Shield that was Shield through the ages, basically. Leonardo da Vinci was the main character in the book, and the artist had died, and so the family had said, "Hey, no, we don't want to put out the last book, so we're gonna wait." And Marvel's like, "Okay, we'll wait." He talked the family into putting out the last book and said, "Hey, Marvel, if you let me come back and do something for you, do whatever I want, I'll make sure we get to print this book." And they got to print the book. They reprinted the whole thing, the whole series. So they got a whole nother run of everybody buying it. It's Jonathan Hickman, brilliant artist. They put out the final issue. And then they announced that he's going to be doing House of X, Powers of X storyline. And I was just like, I called it. And that was, this one of those moments where I was like, yes, I paid attention. And so that was fun. It was really cool. It was all, and at that point in time, I wasn't doing a YouTube channel. I wasn't doing anything other than I had, I didn't even.
That's how you got to market yourself. The guy that called it, the guy that knows.
The guy who called it.
Yeah.
Well, and then I was so angry with Marvel after that. But go ahead.
I wanted to touch base to you. You said Superman, and when we've asked the modern question, you're the first person to say Superman. So, A, who's writing that, and then B, what are you liking about it?
Well, Joshua Williamson, that is the draw, and I've never read a Superman story this good since the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale Superman for All Seasons. And it is, J. Michael Straczynski did a great job, writing the book until they were ready to go to New 52. He did a great job. I really liked the Superman and Lois story, the Superman and Lois Lane story they did after everyone hated New 52 Superman. And that was a great storyline. They kind of survived the crisis on Earth, and then he's been being Superman in the background, wearing the black suit and hiding out and never really being seen. And Lois is writing under a pseudonym, writing books about the inner gang or whomever, and that was a good story. And I loved where they built it into and brought him back as Superman, which then Bendis wrote his Superman. And that was a pretty good story. I won't knock Bendis on that. It was a pretty good story, but this is different. And it's different in a way that the art and the writing are so connected and so well put together, and the storyline is so well. So the next writer out there that's awesome, I would say Hickman-esque, is Jonathan Williamson. I don't know if you've read anything by Jonathan Williamson.
No, definitely.
He likes horror. He wrote a comic book called Dark Ride, or is writing a comic book called Dark Ride, where it's and that's also on my pull list. Is a guy where it's this guy who is Walt Disney, but he signs his soul over to, and here we go. I'm talking about a comic book about someone signing their soul over to the devil, and they give themselves he gets a demon theme park.
Sounds like Spawn.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, it's terrible. It's like I just complained about Spawn, but I was also 18, 19, 20, and I'm now 50, and so it's it's like a different era. Plus, the storyline actually feels like it has somewhere it's going, right? And it looks like there's good and evil in the book, where and you feel like the forces of evil are not necessarily going to win, but they've been winning for a long time. So it's it has some life aspect to it, yet it has some of the hero and the normal guy hero, and that is I think that's missing. You don't have a lot of normal guy hero books, and this is one of those, and I like that a lot. And so I like where it's been going, and I was surprised by it. And it was a recommendation by Chris at the comic shop. So shout out to I Like Comics, and Chris at I Like Comics. So he recommended it. He's like, "You like Joshua Williamson?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I do." And he's like, "Well, you're reading this book, and this book of his." I'm like, "Oh, well then, yeah, I really like him." So anyway, and so his Superman though is just so unique and so different, and yet so Superman. Even to the point where my wife, who used to read Superman in the late 70s, early 80s, because her dad was a huge comic book collector. He would buy her Superman comics, like he'd buy her 80-page giants when they'd go on a road trip, and she'd have like 2 or 3 of these 80-page giants that she'd be reading through. And this storyline just touched me so much. I was like, "Honey, you've got to read this. I think you'll like it." And so I gave her what I've read so far, and for her to read. So
nice. So let me ask you then, now kind of shifting gears a little bit, talking. So you are also a collector, and if you have 20 books on a pull list, I mean, and you had 40 before then,
40.
what is cover
40.
price? $4. What is cover price? $4. So I mean,
yeah, $4 to $5.
You got a nice chunk of change in the budget for reading, and then you have
that's monthly or
side.
weekly. That's monthly, right? 40
monthly,
books monthly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah,
monthly. Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, it's like that's a lot of money in a month on books.
No,
but I mean, still,
monthly.
like, how do you balance the two?
Well,
like, what takes higher priority to you?
Well, eating and feeding the kids, and
I mean, the collecting or the reading.
Oh, the collecting or reading. So
I'm gonna assume you take good care of the family, Travis.
Honestly, a part of it is the balance is that I have to ask myself what I want to do. And this last year kind of was a big shift for me. I wasn't buying 40 books a month until this last year, and it was kind of a shift in my thinking on how I wanted to collect, how I wanted to buy and resell, and then also and also just what I want. And so this last year kind of was this cobbled together. I'm going to buy all these things, and I'm going to do all these things, and then it just kind of, after watching everybody's kind of like, "Hey, these are my collecting goals this year," and I was like, "Oh, people have goals on their collecting. Well, I should have goals too." So I started thinking about that a lot, and that was kind of why the poll list got cut. And also because when I started the buying reselling of comics, it was the height of the comic book, right before the height of the comic book boom. I started in 2019, and I was like, I'm going to do this because I think there's going to be something good going on here, and I hit it at the right time. COVID hit, and I had a good assortment of graded books and of hot keys that people were looking for. And I'm in that first year of COVID, I made a whole bunch of money, and it was great. And then I tried to replicate that the next year, and I noticed that around that 2020 started to dip, 2021 started to dip down, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to back off. I'm not going to buy as much and all this stuff. And then it just, I had a bug, and I was feeding this this almost mania of comic book collecting, or comic book collecting, and it's like I gotta feed this. I gotta have this run. I've got to have this run. I've got to have this run. I'm like I was talking to Walter about it. I'm like, Walter, I don't want just that issue. Well, if it's the issue that's worth money, why do you want the run? I'm like, because how am I going to read the whole story if I don't have all the issues? And he was like, a trade paperback. I'm like, but that's a trade paperback. It's not worth anything. And so it was like it was like going through my head. That was what went through my head. Of course, I'd say that, and there's 3 shelves full of trade paperbacks in the hallway. So,
so when it comes to collecting, it's safe to say you are a run collector then.
Yeah, I would say that I'm a run collector. I like, if I'm gonna get something, I want to get it all.
Yeah. So you touched on them. Talk to us. What are those goals for the year then that you have? I know you've mentioned them on the thread, but once you let
I hadn't mentioned. I have a video that I haven't published yet.
Oh, here we go! Breaking news.
That I recorded 3 weeks ago, and I haven't published yet. So, because other things, other videos get in the way, and anyway, so my collecting goals this year, I have a Marvel Star Wars run that I would love to complete.
That's the run from the 70s you're talking about.
Yeah, the run from the 70s into the 80s that kind of ends with the 5-issue or 4-issue Return of the Jedi. And I have most of the big keys on that already. I have my first appearance of Boba Fett. I have a number 1 in a very fine to near mint copy, so probably a 9.0, maybe an 8.5 to a 9.0. I have, and I also have the really awesome Boba Fett cover that everybody wants, where that's been homaged a bunch of times.
The big head,
yellow one,
big head on the cover.
Yep, I have that. So I have all the major cues. Yeah, first Mandalorian. Yep. So I have all the major keys for that stuff. So, but I'd like to get all the issues, because like Aikens talks about it. He wants to read everything, right? And I'm thinking to myself, that would be cool. I'd like to read it.
Now, so you have the Return of the Jedi books. Do you have that 1 to 4 miniseries?
I have 1 through 3. I don't have 4. I'm missing that one.
This probably won't help you out, because I found in that antique store I've been going to, they have 1 to 4, but still in the poly bag from the 80s. So it's still wrapped in the 4 set, all 4 together in that set. So you'd want to read them. Nice. So that's all 4 of them together. But that was pretty cool. But I've always seen them in pieces, but never together. So I didn't know that was a continuation of the I thought issue 110 or 106 was the last one in that run, and I didn't think they continued it from there.
They did a 108, so it was 1 through 107, and then they did a 108 and call it Star Wars Legends, and released it from Marvel. I think it was right before they did the Bounty Hunter series. Star Wars Bounty Hunter series came out, the one with the cyborg dude.
Okay.
If anybody even knows who that guy is, I barely knew who he was. I was like for me, Star Wars is the thing. So as soon as it came, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Although there's only one Star Wars thing in this room right now, and you can't even see it.
I was trying to figure out
what it was. There's a Han Solo back there. Yeah. Well, and then I have this. I got these with a comic book in it, right? So that's from the Empire thing. So the comic book, the book that was in between Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back that they did, Shadows of the Empire.
Yes, where he was chasing Boba Fett to get Han Solo. That's
Yes.
a storyline I think they can make a movie about. Not to derail, but I definitely think that's a movie they could make today and use new characters and go with that, offshoot. So
I
yeah, I remember that.
agree. Yeah, I mean, I would be totally okay with new actors reprising, taking over these roles and doing something else with them, right? I have, I of course have my opinion. I think Winter Soldier, the guy who plays Winter Soldier.
Yes,
Sebastian
he should be Luke.
Stan. Wait, did you just go mute, Travis?
Technical difficulties.
Are we back?
There we
We're back.
go.
Okay, so my microphone died. So this must be the one I've been using. So I'll plug it in.
You were saying you think Sebastian Stan though should be Luke Skywalker?
Luke Skywalker, absolutely.
100% agree.
And you know what? I didn't have a problem with the kid who played Han Solo in the Solo movie. I had a problem with the script, but I thought he was okay. He wasn't bad.
Here's my general opinion in this kind of area to begin with, and this applies to the MCU, if the DCU, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't need, like, for example, like, again, obviously very sad Chadwick Boseman passed away, right? I don't then need the MCU to be like, well, then the Black Panther passed away. Like, I like the Black Panther. And there are plenty of phenomenal actors. Like, if they recast him, like, I know some people would be upset about that. That would not bother me because I am tied to the characters, not to the actors. Now, I understand that's a lot of pressure they probably have to live up to. They may not want to live in someone's shadow. So you may have a hard, but like, I'm all for it. Like, recast Iron Man, recast Captain America. Like, give me, because I like their stories. I have no issue seeing a new Wolverine that we're going to get eventually. Like, that does not bother me at all.
Right. Well, and think about it this way too. It's like people get older in reality, right? And when you look at the art that when people draw Captain America, nobody draws Captain America exactly the same as the guy who drew Captain America before. When I look at Jack Kirby's Steve Rogers face on, issue 110 of that's the cover that has Captain America's face and Steve Rogers' face on it, right? I think it's 110. I don't picture, Daniel Arcuna's version of Captain America and Steve Rogers in the same. They don't look the same to me.
Yeah,
I know that it's Captain America, but
one I think about in that regard is like Peter Parker has looked so different in so many different renditions. Like, so yeah, I am in total agreement. Like, so like, yeah, Sebastian Stan would be a great Luke Skywalker. I never thought about it, but like, I think you're right. Like, he would be a great.
Yeah, he has that dimple like Luke Skywalker had.
Everything.
I was just talking to my son about
it. So
yeah, I mean, I was talking to my son about it yesterday because he's 18. He got back and he got into Star Wars recently, and he watched them as a kid because I always sort of thought it was neat that Star Wars began when I was born, right? And it sort of the last episode at the time 3 that finished that first 6 movies came out a couple months before he was born. So it sort of began and ended with the two of us until they made 7, 8, 9. So he had watched them as a young kid, and he always thought 1, 2, and 3 were awesome. And I said, you can't, those are terrible. I said, you have to watch 4, 5, and 6. And we fight about this all the time now. And I said, the proper way to watch this is from what I heard recently from another YouTube channel was you watch 4 and 5, then you go back and watch 1, 2, 3, and then you watch 6. And then you can get the world building that the originals had, and you can sort of get the backstory with Vader and whatnot. And I said, what would be great is if they could tell a story in between Jedi or Empire Strikes Back and Jedi, because you can go with all new characters that a story you've never seen or heard before. And it won't make a difference that Luke Skywalker looks different because that's a complete offshoot story.
I mean, I feel like if we're to get into this realm, and we're going to recast, my personal opinion, again, I like Star Wars. I love the original 3. I think they've made a lot of crap since then. But in my opinion, if we're going to recast, let's just start over and go forward, right? Because
Yeah, but I don't.
now it's like the chronology of it all is so confusing to me. It's like this is the
I don't.
prequel. I was saying this, the prequel to the sequel, and this is before
Let's
Luke,
put
but
it.
before
Let me
that, and it's
put it
like,
this
what
way.
is going on?
I'm not a fan of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, any of that kind of stuff. I think those movies were too long. That's not my cup of tea. But I've read and listened to different YouTubes and whatnot, people that are fans that say you can cut those movies down and take out the fluff. You don't have to remake 4, 5, and 6. You can make one movie or two movies that basically encompass
Sure,
those
however
three
you want to do
films.
it. Yeah, I don't necessarily
You know
need
what I
it to
mean?
be the exact.
Then
I
you're
don't.
not
Yeah,
then you're not gonna piss people off and say, oh, they didn't it wasn't the original. Make it different, like Star Trek.
agree.
When they
Yes,
did the
agreed.
Star
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I don't need.
You
I don't
you
need
could
my.
literally edit 1, 2, and 3 into one movie,
Yep.
and you could edit 4, 5, and 6 into one movie,
Yeah,
and
and
I
and
then,
agree.
you can capture the essence of those movies. You could release them as special edition, like what would we call them? You guys remember Reader Digest
Yeah.
novels? The Reader Digest version of Star Wars, and then and they give us those as kind of like a precursor to whatever they're going to do next, and
Yeah.
I think that would be great. Yeah, I mean, for me, we were having an argument or discussion with Ricky, right? And he's like, I dare someone to say that Star Wars is great, I think, and I made the comment, I was trying to be funny. I'm offended, but I'm not ever offended, so it's never. So
the thing is Star Wars has the potential to be great,
mhm.
right? And to me, now I'm just so lost. Like, I actually enjoyed Ahsoka, but I have no idea where Ahsoka takes place in the timeline. Like,
Yeah,
it makes
it's
no
hard to-
sense. So,
Right. Well, I could tell you.
I mean,
Yeah.
JP's
I am
explained
curious.
it to me like
You
JP's
might have to
explained
give
it to me
me
three or four times. I feel like, but
real quick,
Yeah, I mean,
where is it supposed to be? Where's the storyline supposed to be at for Ahsoka? That's in the Mandalorian time frame?
yeah, it's in the Mandalorian time frame. It takes place after the last Mandalorian story that we saw.
And it takes place after Jedi and before The Force Awakens. Between those
yes,
two.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
well, what's weird
And
about that, right, is young Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan, and then she's
Mhm.
like gone through episodes 4 through 6, and then like where was she?
well, I mean, when you create a character after the fact
This
and
is
it
my
becomes a
point.
fan favorite,
This is
I mean,
this is my point. Instead of just being like, well, she was there, and then now she's there, and now we have the sequel, and then the prequel, and and it's just like, let's just start over and like go forward.
Basically,
Right.
yeah, write her into
Right,
the
and then
early.
and then you watch Ahsoka, right? And it's like there's this Grand Admiral Thrawn. It's like where's he been? Like, how did he ascend to Grand Admiral? Where's he been? Like,
Right, but those when you in the 90s when we were growing up and we were thirsting for more Star Wars stuff that I forget the guy's name,
Timothy Zahn.
Timothy Zahn wrote those 3 books that were supposed to be 7, 8, and 9, and I was so looking forward to them making those movies. And then they came
I
out.
mean, those books. I mean, so to
That's where
swerve
Thrawn
back
came.
to comics for a second. So the Dark Horse, right? They put out the Dark Empire series, right? And that was the first time we got any Star Wars past Star Wars. That was the exact first thing. Cam Kennedy's art. I can't remember the writer's name right off the top of my head, but those books, we get to see Luke so powerful. I mean, he crushes
The AT-AT.
an AT-AT on the second page of the comic book, and you're just like, yeah,
And
Jedi Knight!
they
And you're
used
so
that
stoked.
in number 8. They used that in
Mhm.
the Rise of Skywalker or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Somewhat used that scene, right? I thought that was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
But
because he
again, it's
like
much
just
better.
brings it down, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
much better in the comic, but they used that similar scene when he was fighting Kylo Ren and the AT-ATs at the same time, which was pretty sweet. But yeah,
anyway,
So
he's using the Force.
I have
He's
another
using the
daughter,
Force.
Sarah, got me trying to talk to me about something. I don't know what she's saying. Go away now, please. I love you.
I do want to actually shift gears a little bit though. So one of the things I've been thinking
Yep.
about. What's that, JP?
Nothing. Go ahead. You're not a Star Wars fan, right?
No, thing is I am a Star Wars fan, but I want it to be better. It can be so much better is the thing. So that's my big gripe. It's like,
okay, so maybe I'll give you some homework, and then you can have some of the experiences I had.
yeah,
Because you got to think about it this way. One more thing about Star Wars. So in 1977, when it came out, I was 4 years old. Okay, and so what happened was it was such a phenomenon here in the Northwest too, as it was everywhere else in the country. My family, who was mostly from Eastern Washington, all came out here to Vancouver, and we went to the Hazeldale movie theater, and I saw it 6 times in that theater with 6 different groups of family members. So Star Wars is this huge family thing for me too.
and that's great. I love that memory.
And so we did that with them. We did that with the new movies when they came out, because my girls were they were born in 2006, 2009. So we did that with the new movies, and we did a big family thing. We bought T-shirts. We'd buy Star Wars T-shirts for going to see the movie. Not necessarily movie T-shirts, but definitely cool Star Wars T-shirts. And we do that, the whole thing. And then my oldest really got into Star Wars and fantasy and stuff like that. And we talk about it all the time. In fact, to the point of we've been waiting. We went back and watched the rest of the last season of Bad Batch before we watched the new episodes that just started out last week. We didn't even watch last week's episodes until last night because we had to finish the series.
Yep.
So that was it. And so Star Wars is a family thing for me. But
that's great. I love that.
But on the other side of it, being the kind of run collector that I am, I have to understand what I'm looking at. And if you above my desk at where I work, not out here, but my desk, there's almost every Star Wars book that had come out in the first after Disney took over Star Wars. Every canon book up until just about until not Last Jedi, but the last movie, Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
I have almost every canon book.
Canon book
that came out. Yes, books that are in the current canon.
Right. Does that include the Timothy Zahn books now?
Yeah.
Okay.
The new Timothy Zahn books. He's got 2 series of Thrawn that he did.
Okay, I only read the ones that came out in the 70s or 90s, but yeah. But as a kid longing for that stuff, there's such a big galaxy that you can get into that. They can offshoot it anywhere like Marvel. And it's just there's so many opportunities for that storyline that it went dead in the 90s until night.
That was just brought to me. That would be
trying to think of it.
What? Just say the name, Rube. Hunter.
How could you?
Hunter.
I don't know. It went blank. Hunter from the Bad Batch.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, see this. I was never a person that cartoons were not canon to me.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was a cartoon, I didn't watch it. And we had Phil from One True Nerd King on, and he said, if you want to, like, something I tell my son too about episodes 1, 2, and 3, that they did not stick. And we'll get to something else in a minute here, but they did not, like, my ideas of what Anakin Skywalker was in my mind when I watched them in the 70s and 80s was not what I saw on screen in the 90s. And I said, I just felt like underwhelmed with what they put on the screen. And Phil said, you should watch the Lego. What was it? The Clone Wars. And that made the bigger storyline of the actual Anakin Skywalker being the great fighter, pilot, all that you talked about in the story.
Yeah, so I would say that if you just wanted to have more Anakin, you could really shorten it up. There was a Genndy Tartakovsky. I can't think of his name if I'm saying it right. He's the guy who did Samurai Jack. He did a bunch of short Clone Wars cartoons, and they have some of the best Anakin, Obi-Wan interactions and Jedi stuff that happened during the Clone Wars, and it was all from Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm said, "Hey, we want someone to do this," and it's his art style mixed with Jedi stuff, and it was cool. It was really cool. Now, Clone Wars, the cartoon, I would say there's some really great stuff in season 1, 2, and 3, and you could probably skip the movie
Right. Yeah.
that came out first. But
I did like we had Bianca Collects on here, and she gave us here are like the key episodes you have to watch. You don't need to watch them all. And I did that, and it's just like they're fine, but like, it's a cartoon. It is made for kids, and as an adult, it's just like it's kind of boring. And so it's like when you're like, you gotta go back and watch the Clone Wars, it's like that's not exciting to me. Like
I gotta see. I thought it was cool in Ahsoka when you saw live action Captain Rex. And
I enjoyed Ahsoka. I enjoyed it. And so it's just like, let's just do this thing from the start. In my opinion, again, do it from the start and let's do it right. So
yeah, it's wipe the slate clean. I mean, there's plenty of people that are chomping at the bit, so I think it's right for the pickings now for the Star Wars lore. I don't think that.
I think it might be ripe for the pickings for people who are going to probably buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Disney's going to I just predict that it's going to get sold.
Oh, here we go. Travis's predictions. Here we go. He called Hickman. Now he's called Star Wars. Disney is going to sell.
Do you think they're going to? I think they're going to sell Star Wars to Sony to buy back to trade for Spider-Man.
No, Spider-Man will. Sony's not going to let. Again, people
They're
need to
talking
understand,
about it. They're talking about it.
Why Sony's never going to let go of Spider-Man? They don't give a crap about the movies. They make 50x the amount of money on those Spider-Man games.
Right, they can keep the game, but they're talking that the movie rights. I think they can trade Star Wars.
Yeah, as long as they're going to keep the video game, Sony.
Yeah. I think the other side of it is that I guess what I'm trying to say is I think Disney's going to get broken up. I don't think it's going to stay. I don't think Marvel is going to stay with Disney.
I mean, I could very well likely see.
I think they're going to own the IP. I mean, I even kind of predict that the comics are going to end up being Marvel comics, but run by other smaller companies. Like Skybound is now doing Hasbro's books, right? So they're doing G.I. Joe. They're doing they have the full rights to it. So they run everything for it. So next movies come out are going to be tied to the comic books for Transformers and all that stuff. I predict this. I think this is the model that's going to happen. I predict that they're going to. This is going to happen. We're going to have Star Wars is going to be its own entity owned by a small group of companies who will be or maybe Lucasfilm. Who knows? And Lucasfilm will be run by someone like, say, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, or a whole other host of other people, other creators.
I like that model. Like it seems like it consolidates down who's making the decisions, and I think that sounds good.
And then Disney just distributed. It's like they become the Fox, right? That distributes the 20th Century Fox. It just does its distribution, and then they get and then they get residuals from it. So they're making money on it. And then they don't have to fight the fan. They don't have to be the guys who the fans get mad at, right?
Yeah.
And so people still come to my theme park,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I like that. And let's just say, if this comes true, we're going to have Travis back on again, and he's going to give us the next lottery ticket or the Powerball numbers, because he is the predictor extraordinaire.
If that happens, I'm buying a lottery ticket and going to do those numbers.
All right. So I do want to shift gears a little bit though here. So recently I've had this thought in my head. It's like, it would be, we've had collectors, obviously, we've had dealers, we've had content creators. I would actually like to have one of these days a store owner, like that owns an actual physical location to talk to, because I have some questions but with that in mind, you as a side gig work at your LCS, correct?
Yeah.
So
yes.
how many days a week are you working there? Like what kind of time?
I work twice, basically every other Monday. I do new comic books. I move 250 long boxes. I do everything that he does there. So
I'm interested to hear like the perspective of being in a brick and mortar. Like you're there every other Monday, and you were so. For those that don't know, Travis works at I Like Comics, which is the biggest comic book store in Washington, and they're like, when I first started, they used to go to the big cons. They haven't gone the last couple years, but like they're the booth that's at the con that has your AF-15. They have X-Men 1. They have, all the bangers, right? So this is a big shop. So my question to you is like, how often are you seeing collections walk into the door? That's a very interesting, because I hear some people talk about like there's collections walking in every other day. There's like, what do you see there?
So every Monday that I'm there, someone calls and someone comes in.
Both
Every Monday.
Yep. Every Monday. Every time I'm there, he's getting a call about, hey, I've got this collection, or hey, I found these books in my grandfather's attic. Hey, I've got this. Can I bring them in, see if there's something you're interested in? And I would say that about 50% of the time, it's just junk books.
Yeah.
And I was there once when he picked up a big set of books. But on the other side of that, it's also, you got to be careful because they've had some pretty high profile thefts in the area recently too.
Yeah,
so
I mean that's all over Washington happening, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. And so
What do you mean,
what's that,
are they
JP?
stealing stuff from the shop, or they're stealing?
Yeah, stealing comics. Yeah.
Well, no, stealing comics from. I think I can talk about this one now. About 6 months ago, right when I was about ready to start, when I started working for Chris, or when I was going to start, but we were not doing anything yet. He called me and told me not to come in. And I'm like, oh, is something wrong? He's like, well, and he tells me the story, but apparently in Portland, a very wealthy individual who had a large collection it was stolen after he passed. And that person, those people, the perpetrators, then it got reported. Chris heard about it. He reported it to the FBI because apparently it was going across state lines, things like that. And they got back in touch with him and contacted him and started, doing all the details and things like that. And I mean, he never told me if any of those books ever came in. I never knew anything about that. I just knew that this is like what has been going on, though. I mean, we were just talking about it more recently. Someone else another collection had recently been taken, and heard about a store that actually was buying them and reselling them. And
I mean, there is
full knowledge of that too.
There is no doubt that there are definitely some shops that would. I mean, I'm not trying to like call people out, but like that's just human nature. Yeah. Like if someone sees a deal, they're gonna capitalize if they can, and knowing that they're not gonna get caught. Like that's just how
right.
It But JP, I was gonna say, like in the last like 2 years, I want to say like almost every comic book shop in like this Puget Sound area has been broken into. Like it's a consistent thing happening.
Yeah. That is very true. It's very much.
It's very interesting to hear you say that every Monday you work there, someone's calling, someone's walking in. How often? So 50% of the time they're junk books. So are you saying the other 50% of the time he's buying the collection?
Oh yeah, Chris buys probably the most comics in the area. I mean, he's even bought from me. So I mean, and I mean, it's like he buys consistently. That's why he's the biggest store in the area too. So I mean that's a big part of it. So
and that's why I want to talk to like one of these stores, because like it's a concept that's so crazy to me that you have a business and you're now obviously like there's a part of the business that's going to be new comic books that he gets delivered and people buy, obviously, but like and there are some like the LCS I went to that's now closed. He was only back issues, and so it's like you have this issue or this business predicated on the notion that on a regular basis people are going to walk in or call you, be like, hey, I have this box of comics that's worth a lot of money that I need to sell you. And that's how you maintain your business. Like, it's crazy to think that there's no just like drought You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yep. I mean, and what's crazy is that, having to reprice books all the time. That's the crazy
I imagine
thing,
that's
right?
one of your jobs there.
Well, no, here's. Go ahead.
I'm just going to make a
JP.
point that, I grew up in a family business, and one of the things that, you have some aspects of a business that you can make money on. Let's say if it's in a bar business or a restaurant, you make more money on the booze than you do on the food. Some cases, there's more margin there and whatnot. So if you're a comic book seller, you own a store, you don't make probably as much money on the new books if you do sell them, right? I don't know how much margin there is, but you're buying them directly. But if you can get someone to sell you their collection for pennies on the dollar.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? But it's almost like, and nothing against any dealers out there or shops, but it's bullying tactics that they're able to tell someone where I can only give you 10 cents for each of these books when they're worth way more than that. It's almost like mafia, gang related stuff that you're saying I'm going to buy it. That's what you're going to sell it to me for. And I'm going to make money reselling it for 10 times.
Well, so so let's speak to that. I actually want to talk about that because that's something that I've always kind of had a problem with. But so let's be fair with let's be a little bit fair. That's not every comic book collector, not every comic book store. And, the reason why Chris is in the position he's in is not because he buys things pennies on the dollar. He does when the opportunity for something like, okay, hey, this comic book store is going out of business and I'm buying everything from them. So I'm buying all their back issues and I'm paying 10 cents on the dollar per back issue. But if I walk into the store, we negotiate. We talk about it. We say, okay, this is what I value this book. And he's like, okay, I see that value of that book. I can't, so for my overhead and being able to have it on my shelf and to make this money, I would only be able to give you X price. And then we talk about that price and we make a deal. And I have always walked out of there feeling like he gave me exactly what I needed when I needed it every time. So I would say that that may not be everybody's experience. And I definitely know that's not been my experience at every shop that I've ever gone to, because I have had comic book shop. I've been collecting for so long that I would say that I have had a shelf at almost every comic book shop in the area, including Portland. Portland, even as far as Beaverton. So I've had a comic book shelf somewhere, and sometimes had 2 comic book shelves going on in places. So, I mean,
if he's doing the right thing, obviously there's people that can take advantage of people who don't know, and then there's people who are just, I can only give you X and that's it, take it or leave it, and that's as the owner of the comic books, you can find other avenues. You can sell them on eBay, you can sell them on IG, you can do whatever.
Yeah, I mean, what you're paying for is the time savings of doing all of that, selling individually, packaging them up individually, posting them, all that stuff, right? That's why they're able, like, pennies on the dollar, I think is a little harsh. I think sometimes if we were to describe it, sort of like, but I mean, like, I would say probably the common kind of range we're looking at is somewhere between 25% and 50%, is what they're going to offer you. Like if your collection's worth $1,000, let's just say they're going to give you somewhere between $250 and $500, depending on the shop. Right.
Right.
And I get that because they're offering you that, you're giving them that discounted price because that's going to save you X amount of hours of figuring out how to individually sell or however and I get that. And then that's how they make their money off it and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's like a crime or anything, but like, it's just, again, like to me, the crazy part of it is just that it regularly happens consistently enough to maintain a long-standing, consistent business.
Yeah. And I think the reason why Chris does well is because he's honest with the people that he deals with. And he doesn't tell someone, oh yeah, that's a great book, I'll give you $5 for it. But it's like if you walked in there and you wanted to sell your AF-15 to him, he's going to give you a better price. He's going to give you a higher margin price on that than he would give you if you walked in and said, I want to sell you my X-Men #1 from 2019.
Yeah.
Right? And let's say it's a 1 in 100 Virgin variant cover, graded at a 9.8 and it's worth $250, he's going to give you $125 for that book. If it's an AF-15 and it's let's say it's a 1.5 and that's worth what, 23,000 or no, 18,000 right now,
yeah,
right?
18,000. So
18,000, right? So if he's going to give you something closer to 15, right? 15,000, right? Because that book is going to sit for a while, but he also knows he can sell it because he's already sold. I think he sold 5 in the last 4
but
years.
I think the key here in this example though is like, if you have just an AF-15, right? If you know what's up, like you're probably just going to use a consigner that takes a small percentage,
10%.
Right? Chris is looking at collections, right? And like again, the discount is because you have 400 books that you don't want to deal with individually. He's going to take them all off your hand in one swoop and save you all. And because time is worth something. So like it works both ways. And again, like it's a very parallel discussion to what we've talked about before. Like if you were to go to a garage sale, if you were to go to an antique store and you find, a book that's worth $2,000 and it's there for $50, like, some people may say something, but like, again, everyone has the opportunity to pull out their phone, do 5 minutes of research if they want, right? They decided on this price. It's a price that they'd be happy to let it go of. And like, I have no issue taking it. Like, I'm not going to be, I've said it before. Like, if that's the price that's stickered on it, that's the price I'm going to pay. So,
right, exactly. And that's fair.
Go ahead.
For instance, here you go, right? So Chris has a good run of the Star Wars books. I have a chunk of already have everything, almost one of everything he has. He got a number 4 Star Wars in, right? Of the 77 series. It is pristine. It's a 9.8 copy, if not better. It's that clean. It was in the bin. It was marked at $100, but it was in the 50% off bin. I paid $50 for it. Nice. It's a $300 book.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's too like one of the things you get with the bigger shops is like then they all also are able to offer a better price because of the amount of volume that they are doing. So
right, if he paid $1 or $2 for that book or $10 and he's selling to you for 50, he's making 5 times as money.
I mean, so it goes both ways, right? Like the blade cuts both ways, or
whatever. Right. If you you find something at an antique store, let's say I find something I'm not into, but I know it has other value than the $1 I paid there, and I sell it to someone for 100, they're going to sell it for 1,000. You got 3 happy people there.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
So there's nothing wrong with that part of it, right? I don't need to maximize profit. Somebody else can, because I'm just looking to turn it. If you're collecting, different story. But again, you can have happy customers on all sides of it.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree.
Yeah,
agreed.
So,
Travis, talk to us. Or do you have something else to say, JP?
No, I just was going to say that. I mean, nothing against the place you work at. I wasn't making that implication. You have that ability as the shop owner to sort of, you have more pull because you have cash to buy it. And that's part of having the opportunity cost, right? Mm-hmm. For being in the position you're in. So I have nothing against that of it, but that's that's how you got to get one good deal, and then you can get the next good deals to keep snowballing it from there. As the shop owner.
Yeah. Travis, as we're crossing the hour here, we can start to wind down. But before we do that, what I want to make sure we talk about is your channel. So real quick, tell us about when you started, why you started, and then what you do on your channel for the people that don't watch.
Okay, so I started last February, or maybe last January. I was hanging out with Bigby. I'm going to call him Brian because I've known him that way for 20 some years. So Brian and I had kind of reconnected. We had been connecting off and on, but not doing a lot. And I was wanting to do some art. I just wanted to get together and let's draw, let's do some stuff. And I was collecting comics, and we're talking about comics, and he wasn't really collecting very much. And so we started talking, and he was like, "Yeah, why don't you come up come and hang out in my apartment? We'll draw." And so we did that a few times, and then he started doing his channel, right? And he's like, "You should do a channel. You buy those comic books on Whatnot. That would be great content." I'm like, that seems weird. Why would I put the comic books I bought up on a channel and show them what's the deal, right? So February 5th of last year was my first YouTube video, and it literally was me not saying anything. Oh, no, my first one was me saying stuff. I was sitting in front of my camera. I want to say I was at my desk. Hey, I just got this from CGC and unboxed them. I did an unboxing, right? My very first video was an unboxing. Hey, let me tell you about the comics I'm buying with these comics. I got this poster, and it has all these Marvel covers on it, and I'm going to buy every single one of them because my wife really liked the poster, and I think it'd be cool to have all the comics. So, so those were kind of like collecting. That was my first collecting goal, like really honestly, and I still haven't completed it yet. It's still working on it. In fact, I got one comic this last week. So, but you know, my channel is kind of this eclectic, me collecting stuff, and then as we were doing that, Bigby did this comic book shout out thing, and he said, "Hey, Travis, you do art, and we do art together, but wouldn't it be cool to give art away to people who shout a bunch of people out? They'll get to pull, and they'll get to have an opportunity to win a piece of original art." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds cool." And so by doing that, it kind of made me think maybe I should post my art. And so my channel kind of has morphed into this. I show comics and I show art I'm doing.
And you do like live art on there too, right?
Yeah, I sometimes go. I've gone live 3 times for doing art, just doing art, drawing alive. So like I did the Spider-Man cover I'm working on for someone right now. My brain just went blank, and it was for TM Nerdy's 1000 giveaway. I gave away a drawing for his to celebrate him. So I did. I have a guy I'm working on a Spider-Man cover, which that piece is up on the channel. You can see that up on the channel right now. So, and that was I'm still working on it. And then I've been doing I have this other thing. A friend of ours, Ricky, all sorts of words. He challenged me to do Ricky. He challenged me to do to use a digital art piece, and so I've been kind of posting. I'll work 15-20 minutes on a maybe even like 45 minutes on a drive. I redid a whole bunch of the cover, the parts of it to get it shaped in a better place. And out of 45 minutes, I got 2 minutes of content. I mean, literally, when you condense it to the video to the stream, there's moments where I'm drawing just a little bit of a line. And it's like, and it's going on forever. You're just like, okay, fast forward all this. It's like, I get that the process is important, but you don't need to see every little line.
It's kind of like when you do watch an unboxing video and like someone hasn't done any of it, and so it's like they don't realize how like taped up and how securely, and it's just like you see someone, they're like, it takes like 5 minutes to like get through the package. They're like, "Hey, and I got this," but you're just like, well, now like that's why.
So you guys were watching the other night. Then you saw me try to unbox that crazy wrapping on those comics the other night. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
I did like Travis. You had some shorts you did where you showed, this becomes this, and right. And I thought that was pretty neat. I kind of felt like Bob. What was his name? The
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross with the trees. You were like, this becomes like very chill and mellow, and I was like, oh, this is cool.
Bob Ross has
you like that?
But you're the opposite. You're the Bob Ross.
Yeah, they say Bob Ross is the exact opposite. It's from here to here.
Just put it down here. But your tone was the same with it's like this becomes this. These, what did he say? The trees. He was the
happy little trees.
Happy
little trees. Let's put a little path on this here. Oh, look, a little bunny trail that's going back into the trees.
And that was the tone. I was like, this is Bob Ross of
Happy Mountains. Let's get these mountains in here. We can put some purple on here and some cyan. And get this nice reflection of the dark shadows in the mountain. We can go dark. We can really go dark. Yeah,
No Spawn though. We can't go that dark, but we can go. We can keep it. We can keep it.
Okay, all right. Do you need me to draw you a Spawn? Is that what it is? Is that what
I
you
would.
need?
I would not say no to Spawn drawing. I have to say so.
But I had a rumor that you'd want Punisher though.
I probably would prefer Punisher over Spawn. Yeah, Punisher would be good. Spider-Man would be good.
Yeah.
So speaking to that, there was a comic shop that was like a few blocks from my house when I was in high school, and I was in art in high school, so I did a lot of art there. This comic book shop let me sell drawings for $5 a drawing, and that was Will Spatacio's era of Punisher that was coming out, and I really was into that storyline that Will Spatacio was drawing, and so I drew about 1 million Will Spatacio like drawings of Punisher and sold them at $5 a pop.
There you go.
At the shop.
There's one for you.
Oh yeah, that's a classic, man. That's an awesome cover.
Yeah.
My favorite still is going to be with the one with the ninja, the ninja behind him with the sword. It's all black, and you just have the outline in purple, and that's probably my favorite cover. Still,
I have to look that one up. But Jim Lee did the best. Wilt's pretty good with Punisher, but I mean, the Punisher had me that miniseries 1 to 4. That first,
the Mike Zeck. That's my favorite Punisher's that first.
But
cover.
just the rage in his eyes.
Yeah.
Right, with the 2 guns pointed. I mean, I'd love that cover. I mean, my parents were like, "Oh, my dad wouldn't care," but my mom was like, "You can't buy that comic. It's too violent." And I was like, "But I need to have that comic." And she's like, "No." And I was able to get the Unlimited series #1 because it wasn't as violent looking as that #1.
Yeah, we're just on the fire escape. Yeah,
with the bazooka, he's gonna blow them up with the bazooka.
Oh, that's not violent at all.
It's a bazooka into like an apartment building.
Yeah, it's gonna blow the whole floor. I mean,
and one guy's coming to the door like he's at the window, like who's out there, right, with that big Desert Eagle. But I mean, there's nothing that beats that Limited series #1. I mean, that was one of the greatest covers, I think. Just that it exudes that or shows that character, and I don't think any of the Birth and All shows showed some of that rage, but I think they always missed that when they made the movies. I think that any Punisher movie should have been the 2 hours after his family was killed, that rage for 2 hours straight, just blowing people away until he's just too tired to move anymore and there's no one left.
Yeah.
And that should be the entire movie. It should start out like The Notebook and end like The Punisher. That's how it should be. That's my take on it. You heard it here first. Notebook.
There we go. So we got Travis making predictions, JP's writing scripts. Like, this is what's happening, everybody.
We got it covered here.
Yeah.
So
Travis,
there's a really great homage to that that issue #1, just for Cosmic Ghost Rider, because it's Frank Castle, right?
Yeah.
You knew that. So there's a great Cosmic Ghost Rider #1, the series that came out in 2020, an homage to that cover where it's Cosmic Ghost Rider, just boom, 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 boom. It's awesome. It's just
I'm gonna have to look that one up then, because that cover, that one I'll never forget. That's one I always keep tight.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But Travis, this has been a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you really just recap, tell everyone where they can find you, where your channel is, all that good stuff, and then we'll call it here.
Sure. Okay. You can find me at on IG at Comics Limited. You can find me on YouTube at Comics Limited. You can find me at eBay at Comics Limited.
There you go.
You can find me on Whatnot as Travvic1138, but you'll see the symbol for Comics Limited on there. And there's also comicslimited.com.
Oh, there is. All right.
There is. It's not completely done, but it's a good start for a website for me. I have to get my bio up on there, but generally speaking, that's that, and those are the places you can find me.
That's where you'll find all the predictions for the future.
And I've also written some articles for a blog called Comics Talk Blog. They haven't written anything more recent, but I'd written several articles on that blog as well, and that's my father-in-law. So which I mention him a lot in videos if I'm doing some sort of unboxing, because he buys a lot of books too.
Right on. All right, man. Thanks a lot. JP, why don't you take us out?
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe We love hearing back from y'all, and we will see everyone on the next unboxing, the next interview, the next show off video. We'll see y'all next. Peace out.
Peace out.